and we can. Now, pathologies to know. Atelectasis, I'm telling you it's incomplete, and ectasis is stretching. So this is actually, the alveoli have collapsed. Pneumonia, literally a condition of the lung, but now you need to know that it is an infection of the alveoli. So pneumonia, you must know, is an infection of the alveoli. Cystic fibrosis is in this chapter. It's actually a disease of the exocrine glands that makes the body secrete really abnormally thick mucus, and again impacts the respiratory system because the respiratory tract is lined, lined with mucus that has to be brought up by the cilia in order to get it out of the way. So cystic fibrosis is chronic obstruction. Now again, I saw on television one time, it was one of these NYPD Blue things. These people, they look at the news and try to find something pertinent. And one of the episodes was where, it's New York. People live in apartments. Alleyways between apartments, very thin and very small. And, people leave their windows open. And so in this episode, a neighbor looks out his or her window and sees across the alley into the bedroom of a neighbor and sees a man sitting on the bed with the child draped across his knees, and the man is just wailing on that child's back, and the child is screaming and hollering. It hurts. So concerned neighbor thinks that he or she has witnessed child abuse. But in this episode, it turns out that the child had cystic fibrosis, and the father had been trained on how to unblock it. And so violent looking, but necessary to keep the child going. So looks can be deceiving. COPD. You must know what COPD stands for. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Some people say disorder. I like disease. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. You must know what that stands for. And it's a generic term for any disease with chronic obstruction of the bronchial tubes in the lungs. And so emphysema, chronic bronchitis are COPD. Now, some other pathologies to know. Asthma. Asthma is a narrowing of the bronchi. Again, the bronchi are the little branches. So we have an illustration of a normal one. See, it's nice and open, whereas an asthmatic bronchiole, you can imagine it's going to be hard to get air flowing through that. So asthma, dyspnea, wheezing, coughing. And again, some people have asthma as children and outgrow it. Some people don't have asthma as children and get it as adults. But asthma can be a life-altering condition, So it could change somebody's lifestyle. So pneumothorax, literally air in the chest. Empyema, pyo is pus. So there's pus in the pleural cavity. Hemothorax, blood in the chest, blood in the pleural cavity. Pleural effusion, escape of fluid into that cavity. Some upper respiratory conditions, rhinitis, inflammation of the nose. Coryza, you must know that coryza is the common cold. Coryza. And there's still no cure. They've got these little things out that say they can, shorten the duration of it. But a cold is a cold. Sinusitis, pharyngitis, laryngitis, tonsillitis. Now again, pharyngitis is not hoarseness. It's not laryngitis. So inflammation of the sinuses, inflammation of the throat inflammation of the larynx, the voice box, inflammation of the tonsils. Croup, pertussis, do know the the lay person's term for pertussis. That's whooping cough, pertussis, whooping cough. Now this next word, should we or should we not say the P in that middle of that word? And the answer is no, do not say that P. PH is an F sound, so diphtheria, diphtheria. Not so common in America. We have nice clean water supplies, but diphtheria, very dangerous. Diphtheria. Some lower respiratory, SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, very tragic. Research has been conducted, and they've come out with guidelines on how a child should be put to bed. And so you would need to check to see, do you put them on their back? Definitely you don't put them on their side. I don't believe you're supposed to put them on their stomach either. But SIDS is idiopathic. They still, at this point in time, at the recording of this lecture, they don't know what causes it. But unfortunately, a family could lose their infant to SIDS, and regrettably, there have been such atrocities committed by people against their own children that if it's a SIDS, social services has to investigate. And one of the reasons is there was a famous case in the previous century where there was this man and woman who could not, the man was desperate to have children. And, it was just awful. The wife would get pregnant, give birth, and then the little child would die from SIDS. And so this kept happening. And so finally the husband gave up having a child of his own seed, and so they adopted. Well, don't you know, the adopted child died of SIDS. How coinkydink. And evidently the husband finally got wise and put a camera in the nursery, and it was actually the woman smothering the children to death. And again, evidently the reported reason why is she liked the attention. Oh, you poor thing, you've lost your baby. How tragic is that? So again, there's got to be a special place for those kinds of people. And regrettably, because of that bad, evil behavior, SIDS deaths are investigated. It's sad. That's my soapbox. Bronchitis, you know what that is. Bronchiectasis, it's stretching. Tuberculosis is making a comeback in America. If someone has tuberculosis, they will be yanked from the general population. It's my understanding, though, that someone can test positive for tuberculosis but not have it, but they were exposed to it. For example, I have a friend whose father was in the military during, I believe it was the Korean War or World War I, I'm not sure. And so the father and mother both got tuberculosis. And so my friend test positive, even though she never had it herself. Hyaline membrane disease, just be able to put it in a category of pathologies for this chapter. Lung abscess, you know what an abscess is. Edema, is swelling. Pulmonary heart disease, cor pulmonale, cor as in heart, pulmonale as in lung. Pulmonary embolism, that could be life-threatening to have that blood clot moving up to the lung. Bronchogenic carcinoma. So literally, the literal definition, close to what it means, but bronchogenic, it's more than just the bronchi being cancerous. The lung is cancer. So bronchogenic carcinoma is lung cancer. Anthracosis, let's work into this. So we got pneumono and melanosis. So pneumomelanosis, pneumomelanosis. So both of those would be black lung or coal miner's disease. So that's because melano means black or dark. Asbestosis, I bet you could guess the person has asbestos in their lungs. There's lots of ads from lawyers about finding out if people have asbestosis causing cancer. Byssinosis is brown lung. So working in the textile mills, someone might get brown lung. Silicosis, they've got that quartz silica, so working in the sand mines or glass